All right, now we got to let it breathe while we are live. Bring in the Facebook groups. Click one, click two, save changes. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Friday night. We'll wait for a couple green check marks. And there's one, there's two. Good evening, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Death Valley Deep Divers. I am one of your hosts, Erick Trickel, and joining me, as always, you guys know him, you guys love him, Lance Sanderson. Well, I should say love is a little bit of a, you guys tolerate him. Lance, how you doing, man?
What, dude? What's with the shots right out the gate, man? Damn. Good. I was not expecting this on a wonderful Friday evening. I'm doing good though. You know what? Obviously, Death Valley Deep Divers is the big priority here, but it's a big day in Denver sports, to tell you the truth, because Gabriel Landeskog is about to play his first game since Game 6 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Finals, in which the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. I'm super excited for that. I cannot wait to turn that game on. I've got a link to be able to watch the stream. But we're here to talk Denver Broncos football. It's obviously 2 weeks away from day 2 of the NFL draft. I'm super stoked, getting deeper and deeper into this class. Can't wait to talk some really fun topics with you guys tonight. What's going on, dude? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just still waiting for a volcano to blow. I mean, if you look behind me, things are kind of a little not as cluttered, not as many Legos behind me as normal. They're kind of sitting on the floor around me because when the volcano comes and the earthquakes happen, don't want anything falling and breaking and having to put together. And on that note, I gotta say, man, love the shirt. I used to have one, but it kind of got destroyed. Mixing Star Wars and football, it's a trap as it
It's
should
a
be. A trap on
trap.
play on it. Absolutely love it. An old actually staff member of my Huddle actually bought it and sent it to me years ago. So
Likewise. Likewise. Khalid Al-Sami actually sold this shirt to me. He bought it and sent me the same one.
but anyways, we're here to talk about Broncos football. Hope everybody's having a wonderful night. And we got a couple different topics in here. One of them is from a late an article from ESPN that came out yesterday. It kind of talks to all, people for all 32 teams giving different input. Jeff Legwold offered insight onto it, and then Jordan Reid. Jordan Reid, he's a NFL draft analyst. I mean, I've been following his work for years as he's gotten, bigger and bigger, and he's now with ESPN. But what he said when he's talking about the Broncos here, he says, what we're hearing about the Broncos draft. Now, the Broncos have been linked to the running backs in round 1, but the depth of this running back class makes it more likely that they'll wait until day 2 to grab a player such as Travion Henderson, Ohio State, or Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Now, that's just the first part of the quote. We're going to break this up because there's 2 different conversations here that we want to have. The first part is about waiting on a running back. We kind of go back, and at the ownership meeting, we got a similar comment from George Payton. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember exactly what it said, but he talked about the depth of this class and being able to find a talent somewhere in the 2nd to 6th round. So, Lance, how are you feeling? If are you one of those people that it has to be running back round 1 no matter what? Philip Lindsay is kind of, which is kind of ironic. Undrafted free agent now is saying that Denver, if they don't get it drafted round 1 running back, they're basically SOL. Like it's tough, but because it is one of their more obvious needs, I don't think it is their biggest need. If you go back and watch, I believe Monday or Wednesday morning with Nick and I, we kind of talked about that. But running back is way up there. And I've got some stats that I'm going to pull up here to talk about this as well. But Lance, go ahead and give us your thoughts on it.
No, I don't think that it's running back or die in the first round. This running back class is insane. I believe it was Todd McShay was talking to Colin Cowherd last week about the running back class in general, calling it the deepest running back class that he's scouted in the last 25 years. In fact, he said that he has 18 players that have at least a 4th round grade or better in this year's draft class. And over the last 25 years on average, that number is closer to 10. In fact, I think he was 10 or 12 is what he said specifically. Like you're doubling the number of running back prospects that are quality players. And if you go throughout draft history, I mean, whether it's the Denver Broncos taking Terrell Davis, I mean, Alvin Kamara, 3rd round pick, you can highlight a number of different players at the running back position that didn't necessarily need to be a 1st round pick that can also have a ton of success at the NFL level. And to me, because this class is so deep, you should wait on running back at number 20 overall. And take a position of more value or even a higher need. And this is a conversation we're going to have here in just a couple minutes, talking about sleeper picks at every position, every draft position for the Broncos. But defensive line, you take a safety here. There's cornerback that is a quality player that can be available at number 20 overall. Running back, yeah, it's the biggest need for sure. But because this class is so strong, I don't think you have to take a guy at 20, be all, end all, and ruin the entire draft for the Broncos.
Yeah, before we get into stats, we have Michael Ronquillo coming in with some stars saying, "Good evening, Eric and Lance on the Death Valley Deep Divers. Go Bo Broncos."
So, Mike,
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that. And then David Papa Bear McIlrath coming in with the $2 donation. Thank you, David. We appreciate that as well. Hope you are doing well,
yep.
and doing good and healthy and all that, and having a great time. And we have Todd Ossendorf coming in saying, since we need 2 running backs, we need to draft a running back early for sure. And this is something that Nick and we've talked about a lot on it. Doesn't have to be day one, but you can do, round 2, round 3, and then round 6, or even trade up a pair of those round 6 picks to get into the 5th round and take a guy. It doesn't have to be round 1 and later. It can still be round 2 or round 3 because talent's going to get pushed down. Now, getting over to these stats, they're from Warren Sharp, and he's talking about the Broncos offense, and it's kind of more of a dig at Javonte Williams, but the stats do kind of show why, Sean Payton, he said that he wants to see what the guys they have on roster can do, which they'll be able to because they start their first offseason program just on the 21st, I believe, just before the NFL draft starts. But anyways, Warren Sharp tweeted out, last year the Denver Broncos had the NFL's number 1 ranked blocking offensive line, number 1 in run block win rate by ESPN, and number 1 in pass block win rate by ESPN. On non-Javonte Williams runs, any run that Javonte Williams wasn't the ball carrier, they were number 1 in short yardage conversion rate, number 3 in 3+ yards before contact rate, number 5 in yards before contact per rush, and number 5 in lowest stuff rate. Kind of speaks well or highly of this offensive line and what they're able to do and how much of an issue Javonte Williams was. So it's fair that Sean Payton has some, hope for the guys that they have. Now going into this a little bit more, and it kind of highlights what I was getting at there about Javonte Williams. Despite running behind that number 1 ranked offensive line in 2024, Javonte Williams ranked number 45 out of 47 running backs in rush yards over expected, and number 46 out of 47 in percentage of rushes to gain more than expected. In addition, he only hit 15 miles per hour on only 10.1% of his rushes, which is 39th out of 44 running backs. So we talk about the need of running back, but when you go back and look at what they did last year, it is very easy to see that a big issue with their run game is how much they trotted out Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
So that goes back to they don't necessarily have to invest early, like round 1 on a running back, because they have the infrastructure around them to be successful if you just have a running back capable of taking care of it. And Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, Tyler Beatty before he got hurt, they all showed that ability to take advantage of it to some extent. Doesn't mean they don't need to add. They definitely do. Not saying that. But again, they have the infrastructure in place to get a running back in round 2 or round 3, and then a second one later on to have a improved and successful running game next year.
No, I definitely agree with you, and I think the big thing here is when you're looking at running backs for the Broncos, especially on day 2 and day 3, and even 4th, 5th, 6th round. What kind of traits are you looking for? You want players that have good vision, that can be creative behind the line of scrimmage, and we've highlighted a handful of those players. Guys like Travion Henderson, guys like DJ Giddens, who you could probably have in the 3rd round, guys like LaQuint Allen, who's a day 3 pick, who is a very creative runner behind the line of scrimmage because he has great vision and great patience. You don't need to go out and draft a guy in the 1st round. And don't get me wrong, I like Omarion Hampton, but a lot of those same vision concerns that you had with Javonte Williams are present on tape with Omarion Hampton. And quite honestly, I think that where Jordan Reid was going with this in Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson specifically makes a lot of sense for the Broncos at number 51 overall if those players are even available at that particular position. I mean, there's a handful of running backs you can get from 51 to 85 that are going to be quality players, or even out to number 122, I think is the Broncos' 4th round pick. Like there's players in this class. You don't have to focus in on running back number 1 at number 20 overall. It's just take advantage of the depth of this class, take advantage of the quality of this class, take advantage of the fact that, yes, it's the biggest need, but you can still bolster the entire roster around your rookie quarterback in Bo Nix and still get a quality player in the later rounds.
Yeah, and we have Todd Ossendorf coming in saying, I will be more clear on my earlier comment. Today is my birthday.
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
Todd.
Todd. We would sing you happy birthday, but I'm sure you like to hear, and Lance and I singing would probably, make you lose your hearing. We have Mike Thompson coming in saying, I'm seeing Nolan as a top 15 prospect now. Thoughts? I'll believe it when I see it. He's a great prospect. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of character stuff going around about him. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to see him fall. Um, and then we had another comment here from Jason Perrin saying, with this year's draft class, it seems more likely the Broncos trade up in the second than trade back in the first. I'm going to disagree with you here a little bit. I think it's more likely they'll trade back in the first. All depends on how the board falls. We
Mm-hmm.
could see a situation where they trade back in the first and move up in the second and get two guys that they have ranked together that they really covet.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of talk going around right now about the Broncos looking at trading back and teams viewing that as a viable spot to move up, especially if certain players fall. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders. If Shedeur Sanders does go early, that still could be a spot for teams to look at trading up to get ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who still don't have a quarterback, even though the expectation is Aaron Rodgers will sign with them eventually. They
Mm-hmm.
still want to add more, and they are a team that has been linked very heavily with Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart. So if the Cleveland Browns and New York Giants pass on a quarterback at 2 and 3, 20 is viewed as the prime spot for those teams to want to get up ahead of the Steelers to go get either Sanders or Dart, depending on how the board falls. And Denver may not be willing to jump back that far. Maybe they will. Maybe one of those teams will be desperate enough to throw in next year's first round pick or second round pick. Either
Mm-hmm.
way, depending on what else is offered, of course, I'd likely take it. Now getting
Well,
back
and
into this,
just
go
quickly,
ahead.
a team that I think was definitely willing to move up, especially given the depth of this defensive line class. If they're really looking forward to bolstering that defensive line that was struggling against the run this last season, the Buffalo Bills. They're also looking at a wide receiver. I mean, Emeka Ibuka makes a lot of sense. Matthew Golden makes a lot of sense. Luther Burden makes a lot of sense for the Buffalo Bills. They may be willing to trade up to get in front of teams like the Minnesota Vikings, teams like the Los Angeles Chargers, teams like the Houston Texans that are looking for receiver help. They're looking for interior defensive line help. With the way that this board falls, you get a handful of guys that go earlier than expected, like a Walter Nolan, like a Kenneth Grant Jr. You could see Buffalo trade up for a guy like Derek Harmon very easily. They have 2 second-round picks, by the way, so they could throw you a second-round pick, maybe a day 3 pick, like a round 5. You exchange round 5 picks, do a little pick swap, get another second-round pick, and you stay in the first round. Absolutely, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense for the Broncos.
Yeah, issue is the Bills, the receivers that they've been looking at, the defensive front guys they've been looking at. Those are all guys that would likely be there.
Yeah,
Now
I mean it's fair.
that doesn't mean that the board won't fall and somebody that they really want that they weren't expecting to fall within range doesn't fall in range. I mean, if they do, then obviously I can change things. But they've been linked heavily with Tyreek Williams out of Ohio State, Jaden
Yeah,
Higgins out of Iowa State. Those have been the
yeah.
two names that have really been floating about it. And Mike Thompson saying Sean Payton trading back is the ultimate. I will believe it when I see it. Hey, up until last year, he never drafted a quarterback in the first round either.
Yeah.
Things like that just happen. It changes year to year. Um, Sean Payton, he isn't a guy who favors trading back. George Payton is a guy who favors trading back. Sean Payton is the primary decision maker in Denver. But this could be a year that we could see it because it just makes sense for where the Broncos team is at,
Mm-hmm.
but even more so with where this draft is, with the
Yeah.
strengths of this draft, with it being, few hot blue chip true first round prospects. I just was compiling my board here, and I think I have 13 first round grades, which means that there's going to be, almost 20 players drafted, 19 to be exact, who don't have first round grades off my board.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that could be a situation that similar to the Broncos, where it's like they get a cluttered board sitting at 20. They want to clear it up a little bit. They're willing to trade back. Hard to say. It's just a possibility. I think it is more likely this year than it is in previous years that the Broncos will look at trading back.
Yeah.
Now, going back to this conversation about running back, last thing on it, Todd Ossendorf came in. It's his birthday. So I'll try to be nice about this as nice as I possibly can. He asks, what about Henderson at 20 and Judkins at 51? What about you, Lance? What do you think about this?
Well, I brought this up last week talking about wide receiver in the first and second round, and I'm going to say the same thing, but even in a more strict manner. Absolutely blanking not. Please, let's not do this. Again, the running back class is really stacked, but the last time the Broncos went back-to-back picks at the same position was Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler back up. Was that 2020 or 2021? Whatever class that was. And
2020.
Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler are not on this roster anymore.
Yeah.
At running back, you're still taking a position of lesser value, even with the great class that it is. I would not suggest doing that. I mean, I get the idea; it makes sense. You watch them work in tandem together at Ohio State; they both fit. But give me a defensive lineman, a wide receiver, a safety, anybody else other than two running backs back to back.
It would be a really bad way to use the resources at hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have your Denver has the first 4 picks, one from the first, one of the second, one of the third, one of the fourth, and then 3 6th-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a decent set of resources for the draft, but not great. And then especially after the lack of, cheap young talent being brought in over the years because of, the Russell Wilson trade, the Sean Payton trade, you kind of need to be a little bit smarter with your picks and the value and the positional value that's going into it. So I mean, it's not just the players, it's just going back to back running back in the first and second round.
Yep.
You are passing up on a lot of talented players to do that at positions that are more valuable and positions that are not as strong as running back is in this class.
Yeah.
Defensive line, they dry up pretty much right around 85. Tight end, it's a great class, don't get me wrong, but it dries up about 120 to 150.
Yeah.
Then you're not gonna, those 6th-round picks, you're not gonna be doing that. So if you go running back in the first, running back at second, then you're gonna basically be like, okay, well, defensive line, tight end, but now what about receiver? Are we just gonna pick up some guy at the bottom, at the very back end? What if we want an offensive lineman? Is that somebody at the back end? It just makes it a little bit more clunky. Linebacker that can be thrown in there. Linebacker dries up right around pick 90 to 120 or so. So it just leads to issues with that. Mike Ronquillo saying defensive line in the first round, running back in the second round. I would be okay with that. Give me Derek Harmon and Quinton Junkins. I'm fine with that. Give me, Omarion Hampton in the first and then Alfred Collins in the second. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And, different other players can be thrown in there. The only running back, of the 3 that we talk about as first round, Genty, Hampton, and Henderson. Henderson's the only one at 20 that I would have issues with, just because there are a lot of concerns going around ever since the combine about his foot. And so, I mean, if the Denver trades back a little bit, he picks up some extra picks and takes Henderson, all right, that eases it up a little bit. It's not just right at 20. So it's a lot's in play here. We have, 2 weeks until the second day of the draft. So we have 13 days until the first round. And going back to the first round, going back to the ESPN article, getting away from the running backs here a little bit. The second part of Jordan Reid's comment is a very interesting one. Mm-hmm. And when I say interesting, it is going to upset a lot of Broncos fans to hear. So he finishes up after talking about the running backs by saying, and I quote, "Instead, league sources have told us that Denver might use its first round pick to add to what is already one of the NFL's best defenses." Hey, everything's fine with that part. Then he finishes up, "Safety Nick Emmanwori is a wild card to keep an eye on here." And this is what is a little bit, frustrating, annoying, whatever word it is you want to use.
Shocking, to tell you the truth.
Shocking is one of them. Nick Emmanwori is Talanoa Hufanga. They are very similar players with what they bring.
Okay.
Nick Emmanwori is better in the box. He's not better deep. Hufanga's better in the box, not as good deep. They can do it, but it's not what they're best at. Right. So when I say that's what they're similar, that's what I mean. Nick Emmanwori here also, and I know a lot of people that are really excited about that relative athletic score. Seeing that 999 or 10.0, whatever one it was. I can't remember exactly what it is. The issue is he didn't run the agility drills. I am not as big of that as being a major issue like Nick is, and that's a conversation we have a lot, but it is still an issue with his game. Best way to put this is he kind of manipulated his relative athletic score, his athletic testing, by not doing the agility drills, because he probably knows that if he did them, he's not going to score out very well, and that's going to be a hit, and that's a concern that a lot of people have, and that's just going to confirm their fears. So That's an issue with Nick Manwari. There's been some comments. Bob McGinn is one of them, and talking about the football IQ, questioning the football IQ of Nick
Mm-hmm.
Manwari. And safety is one of those positions where football IQ really matters.
Yep.
Got to be able to see and break down what's happening down in front of you. Nick Manwari, the only argument you can say to make sense for picking him at 20 is if you have concerns about Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw with, Manwari's ability to play down in the box, he can kind of cover both of them for injury. But is that really worth the 20th overall pick? To me, it's not. And it's not a situation of they're stuck with Hufanga for 2 years. Greenlaw, they can move on after this year. So maybe, you're looking at him to replace Greenlaw after this year. But it's just a tough pill to swallow in what is a pretty decent safety class. You can get a couple guys later on that can kind of potentially fill that and be those insurance policies. Lance, what say you about a Manwari in the first round for the Denver Broncos?
Well, first, let's give a baseline of what Nick Manwari is. This is according to NFL.com. There's their NFL Combine stuff. 6'3", 220 pounds, 32.5-inch arms. Ran a 4.38 40-yard dash with a 1.49 10-yard split. Vertical jump of 43 inches, broad jump 11.6. What you're seeing is an explosive player with rare size and rare length for the position. Like, this dude is huge. I think he has a little bit better range because in a straight line, he has enough speed to be able to play single high. I don't like that as a best fit for him, but I understand why people can say that he could fit in this defense. I'm with you. I think he works better closer to the line of scrimmage. He's a physical player. He triggers downhill in the running game. But also, I want a player that really has more versatility than a guy like Nick Manwari. And to me, Malachi Starks would be the better option if the Broncos were to go safety at number 20 overall, because he does have that range. He has the ability to play down in the slot. He does have the ability to play down in the box and run support. He's a physical hitter. Like, Nick Manwari, I like him, and I think there's a lot of room to develop with him. But he's still too stiff in the hips and short area quickness, especially as a tackler. He brings the physicality, but he takes a lot of bad angles because he is, like you said, so late to react to get after ball carriers. He doesn't see it before he clicks and closes. That first step explosiveness is absolutely there. It's not a fit for me, but if you're going to talk about, and we're going to get into this conversation even further, this was one of the big triggers as to why we have this conversation tonight. Outside the box players for the Broncos at all these draft selections, Manwari is definitely an outside the box player. It makes sense, but also at the same time, it doesn't.
Yeah, and you mentioned Malik Starks. Malik Starks makes more sense, but I am with Michael Rinquillo here. No to safety in the first round. I'm with you, Michael. But if you're going to, Malik Starks makes more sense. Malik Starks has that range to kind of be that center fielder for when the Broncos run cover 3. He has that potential to drop. He can play down in the nickel. So he can, add some security there for Jaquan McMillan. And, being able to play that high safety. Well, Brandon Jones is not on the last year of his deal, but is on a year of his deal where Denver can move on from with little to no cost afterwards. And he's going to be playing a role that he didn't really do last year. We had Cody Alexander on, not this last Wednesday, but the Wednesday before, and he talked about how he really likes Brandon Jones playing out of the box, playing a more of a deeper role. I'm not with him on that. I saw more issues with that last year. But maybe he goes out there and he plays well, but Malik Starks can provide some insurance for that. If Brandon Jones struggles in that role, they can move on from it and then have Malik Starks. But there are different options to go. And then Todd Ossendorf, one more quick comment before we switch things up here. And he says, another great scenario, in my opinion, would be Kenneth Grant at pick 20, Henderson at pick 51, and Mason Taylor at 85.
Yeah.
That would be an outstanding scenario. I would just put the odds of that happening at under 1%. I won't say 100% confidence because there are always things that can happen. I would say with 99.9% confidence, Mason Taylor will be gone in the top 50 picks.
He may not make it to 51. And Eric, I agree with you. This kid is getting a lot of run in the first round. I mean, Eric, you did it in a mock draft you guys ran. Was it last week, I think, on Monday with Nick? You guys talked about Mason Taylor being a potential option for the Chargers at 2022.
If Warren and Loveland are gone, they really want to upgrade that tight end room.
Yep.
The Kansas City Chiefs, they've been doing a lot of heavy work on the tight end room for when Travis Kelce's no longer around.
Yep.
This is a good tight end room. but the talent, teams realize that the talent does drop off after a certain point, and they believe that that talent drops off after a little bit after Loveland and then a lot after Taylor.
Yeah.
So that is part of why, I got ridiculed for putting Taylor in the first round as high as 22 in a mock that Nick and I were trying to be out of the box on. And I don't think he goes that high, but late first round, I could definitely see it at the very least top 40 picks. And Henderson not far behind that either if teams okay him medically, which is where the concern is with him.
So I got a quick question on this, and then we can wrap this up. But we've got Henderson at pick 51, Mason Taylor at 85. What's more likely to happen? Mason Taylor available at 85 or Trey Henderson available at 85?
Oh, both of them at 85?
So one or the other. So you have Mason Taylor available at 85 or Trey Henderson available at 85.
I would say Henderson is more likely just because of the uncertainty around the foot injury.
Yeah. And I would agree with that too. And again, given the depth of this running back class, you got a player with injury concerns, and yeah, he fits a lot of different schemes. But still, I mean, Henderson available at 85 is more likely than Mason Taylor being available at 51 at least in my estimation. Now let's get to the meat. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify: is first of all, I don't think either of them will be there at 85, but I had to pick between the two. And then David Wise says, can we stop with the lesser value stuff, please? This is such a different and unconventional draft for the Broncos. No need to think like an old fossil from 50 years ago. When talking about lesser value, like lesser valued positions, like running back, that's not 50-year-old thinking. That's thinking from the last 10 years.
That's thinking from the last 5 years.
50 years ago, running back was one of the most valued positions in the NFL. 20 years ago, running back was one of the most valued positions in the NFL.
So was tight end. I mean, if you got an extension on the offensive line and a tight end that can block.
So I'm just kind of curious what you're meaning with your comment, David, if you want to give us a brief explanation, because if it's talking about the positional value, that's going off of recency.
Yep.
And not 50 years ago where things were so different, where you had to have a run game and passing was to complement the running game, not the other way around. Now, getting back into this, Lance, I'll go ahead and let you take it off from here.
Yeah, so the big meat and potatoes part of this conversation, I brought this up to Eric right after we got off the show last week, because if you remember the last couple of weeks, we did players with the most risk for the Broncos, players that were the most safe for the Broncos at all of their first 3-round picks. I wanted to go outside the box. Let's talk about some players that aren't necessarily getting talked about. Nick and Nori was linked, I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah back in March or early March, right after the combine, as a player that the Broncos could potentially be looking at 20 overall. And we talk about tight ends, we talk about running backs all the time, but you also have different needs. Obviously, the Broncos need to address this defensive line because we talked about it before. Malcolm Roach is on the last year of his deal. Jonathan Franklin Myers, last year of his deal. You've got Zach Allen, last year of his deal. Ioma Wazirike is really the only 3-technique defensive lineman that you have on the roster that's under contract for 2026. The Broncos obviously signed DJ Jones early in the offseason and made him a priority. But with Malcolm Roach on the outside looking in, moving into 2026, I think Tyleik Williams makes a lot of sense for the Broncos as an interior run-stuffing interior defensive lineman, a nose tackle with some pass rush upside. Eric, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Denver Broncos, they've been looking for that traditional 2-gapping nose tackle type run defender to help boost their run defense. And that is Tyleik Williams. You know, he is a top 2 run defender. Nick thinks he's the best run defender in his class among the defensive linemen. I think he's second to Alfred Collins. Nick has him just ahead of Alfred Collins. He is really quick. I think and really, a lot of burst to him. I think there's a little bit more to work with him. He is a better player overall than Alfred Collins, because I think there's a lot more to work with as a pass rusher.
Yep.
But with the Broncos looking for that body type and that archetype, Tyleik Williams does make sense. I think it would make more sense in a try to trade down.
Right.
But then you're risking a thing with, we talked about it just a little bit ago, the Buffalo Bills. This has been a guy that they have been linked to so heavy throughout this draft process. So maybe you can't move down. Maybe you're forced to take him at 20 because you don't want to risk, which, hey, when you're talking about a draft that has 10 to 15 true first-round picks, blue chip prospects, maybe you're okay a little bit reaching for a guy. And that's one of the things, talking about Omarion Hampton. That's one of the reasons why I've kind of come around to being somewhat okay if Hampton is the pick at 20, because even though I don't have him as a first round grade, so what? I don't have there's likely won't be a guy who I have graded as a first round player that's going to be there at 20. So
Yeah.
the reach there makes a little bit of sense. Tyreek Williams, great player, would fit very well, has good versatility to play up and down the line as well. So he's not just this nose tackle. In certain packages, you can kind of play him out as this 5 technique
Mm-hmm.
or 4-eye that Denver loves to utilize. You can get certain fronts where you have Malcolm Roach, DJ Jones, Zach Allen, and Tyreek Williams out there,
Yep.
all depending on the down, the distance, and the situation in the game. And that Denver loves their 5-man fronts, and then you can sit there and have Tyreek Williams or Zach Allen with Nick Benito or Jonathan Cooper rushing outside their edge. So it provides a lot of options for them, and while providing them with a little bit of contract security and positional security going into next season when they have so many guys set to be free agents.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100% on Tyreek Williams. I really liked him for a long time. I don't remember who I was watching specifically. It was an Ohio State defender, and every time I was watching him, I just kept coming back to Tyreek Williams. That dude just stands out when you watch on tape. We got to grab this comment from Phil McLaughlin. He's dropping some stars on Facebook saying, "Good evening, Lance and Eric. You guys think that the Broncos may add a vet running back after the draft? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life." I think it's a possibility for sure. There's a couple of different guys that I have my eye on, specifically Nick Chubb, formerly with the Cleveland Browns. There's obviously some injury concerns with him, but I mean, if you're talking about a player that can be a bell cow back and you're going to be able to get on a cheaper prove it contract, I think that Nick Chubb makes a lot of sense. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, Nick Chubb would be a fine one. It would be a low risk, potential high reward solution. And I do think that the Broncos should look at adding a veteran after the draft, someone to just help push these rookies a little bit, even if they double dip. It's a position that they just need a lot of competition to help prove. Even if they do want to, have some faith in Jaleel McLaughlin or Audric Estime or Tyler Bidet, whatever the case may be, you can always use competition. Speaking
Yeah.
of running back, Jason Bonnick says, I have to wonder if people who say Hampton has vision problems have actually watched much tape on him. Plenty of cutbacks and sliding through the hole, both of which require vision. Now, Jason, this is a very insulting, as I have watched every single game of his. And I am sitting there and I will tell you, he has vision issues. It is very easy to see if you know what you are looking for. I have talked to a former running back coach, I should say, who also has the issues with his vision. It is very easy to, cut backs. That doesn't mean it is vision. That it could also mean that is the design of the run. It depends on what concept they are running.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a zone scheme, which they did do quite a bit at UNC, he's cutting back into the designed lane. Where vision comes in is if that hole isn't there, is then can he see a undesigned lane open up and hit it? Can he make that cutback? He can make the cutback. That's not the problem. But can he see it?
Mm-hmm.
Javonte Williams, when he had success, it was just following the path of the play. It wasn't sitting there and seeing a hole and running through it. It was just following the design of the play.
Mm-hmm.
You have to separate the two. You have to kind of feel from the blocking concept what it is that they're doing and using the knowledge of breaking that down. Marion Hampton has vision issues. I understand that a lot of Bronco fans absolutely love him. And the thing is that it's fine to an extent that he has the vision issues because he has such great contact balance. He does have good burst and explosion and enough power to break through tackles. The issue is when he doesn't see that lane and he cuts back into the back of or he's following the path of the play and he cuts back and he doesn't see the fact that now one of his offensive linemen's in the way and he runs into their back. That is a lot of things where people are having issues with Hampton.
What?
There is not a single person who has evaluated the draft. Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, Trevor Sikkema, Daniel Jeremiah, all of these guys. They may vary on how poor or good or whatever the vision is, but every single one of them will mention vision is an issue with Hampton. So, Jason, are those all guys that haven't watched Hampton either?
But I think the biggest thing here, and you touched on it briefly, but when I watch Omar and Hampton, I think the amount of times where they run gap schemes, especially duo, and he runs directly into the back of his offensive guard is way too much. Yeah, you see the explosive jump cut and the big burst out of like through the hole and the long runs and the contact balance. Yeah, that's all fine. But when you limit the effectiveness of your run because you're running directly into the backs of your blockers, that's not. And even at the second level, he'll run into the backs of wide receivers at times because he's just running. He's looking in one direction and not turning his head side to side. Like that. That's the big problem that you see with Omarion Hampton. I don't disagree. Yeah, he's got the explosiveness and the traits to create these long runs. But if he could see it better, he could create even more explosive runs. Let's move to our next player here. This one's going to upset some people because the Broncos got a lot of production out of Riley Moss this last season, and you saw the fall off in the defense later towards the season as Riley Moss went down with the knee injury, the sprained MCL injury. But you could still use some more depth on this team. I like Chris Abrams-Drain a lot. I think there's some starter upside on the outside specifically for him in this defense specifically. The Broncos also liked him. They talked about him at the combine, talking about how he grew throughout the season. He was a rookie with the most to grow, and he managed to be able to do that. Had a really good game against the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday Night Football. We all know how that game turned out. That was it was a great game for him. You could still add some more depth. And the Broncos have the opportunity with the play. And this, to me, is a trade down situation. A lot of these guys in the first round, trade down. Let's see what you can get. Trey Amos from Ole Miss. This dude is long. He's big. He's athletic. He's fluid. He's physical. He fits everything to a T of what Vance Joseph wants in his boundary cornerbacks. This dude is a great fit. At 20 overall, probably not. But if you want to trade down and add to this room and also create more versatility, because Jaquan McMillan, an exclusive rights free agent this season, going to be a restricted free agent next season, you can upgrade there. You can drop Riley Moss into the slot if you want to add some more versatility into the safety, add more versatility on the back end. Like that's a conversation for sure worth having. What about Trey Amos, Eric? What do you think?
Yeah, he's a great player. He's been, moving up a little bit. He's always been in that second round, but over the past month, he's kind of gotten that first round talk, which if you've listened to me talk on one of the Monday shows or even on Friday nights before, I've kind of mentioned how, that last, final month push of players into the first round, I'm kind of a little skeptical of, just because a lot of times it just ends up not happening and it's just a conversation creator for one reason or another. But Trey Amos, he has the talent. And when you look at this cornerback class, it's got some good depth to it. And then you look at the class overall that, the meat of the, not many high-end prospects that'll come up often. You guys are going to get pushed up a little bit. So he can be one of those guys that pushed up, especially with a lot of teams there on the back end of the first round kind of need that cornerback help. Will Johnson, he might be there depending on how the injury checks out. Jahdae Barron could be, as teams are kind of unsure of where to play him. And then Travis Hunter, he's probably the second overall pick. But anyways, so you kind of get this aspect of Trey Amos getting pushed up. He can fit in any scheme. He is pretty scheme versatile, and which is always an added bonus to him. And so, yeah, I mean, somewhere in the first round, it could happen. I just don't think it's for Denver. Like you've talked about it, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, while they could potentially look to add somebody to help in that room, I don't think they'll do it in the first round. I don't think they'll do it in the second round. Maybe the third, maybe the fourth is when we'll start hearing, might be getting them to look at some kind of corner to help in the room and just improve the depth. This is another position where they brought in a lot of undrafted free agents last year as well, who a lot of them they like. They have Chris Abrams-Drain as well. And so a lot of things that they can like there. And going to the chat real quick, we have Jason coming in. I haven't heard much talk about Broncos drafting an offensive tackle. With Bull's age, I would think they would be looking at mid-round prospect to develop over the next couple of seasons. I've said this before, those those day 3 developmental tackles, they're not as much of a thing as they used to be. With the way the game has changed, tackles aren't going to be anything or just getting drafted early. Even guys that may take a little bit of development that they really believe can be a franchise left tackle, they're taking early. Still some exceptions, but it's far fewer now than it was 10, 15 years ago. When we look at what Sean Payton has done, and even George Payton before Sean Payton got here, it was the undrafted guy. That's where they were looking at. They took an undrafted guy to try to develop and see if they can make something out of. I would expect the Broncos to look that way again. They do like Matt Peart as a guy to sit there and potentially replace Mike McGlinchey. They also like Alec Palczewski, though they seem to like him more as an inside guard instead of a tackle. That was made clear last year. I mean, he did play tackle for them in an emergency situation,
Mm-hmm.
but they preferred him inside. They also really like Frank Crum, and so maybe they're betting on his development here. But it seems like for the most part, there's not a it's not a I forgot the word I was saying for it. There's no, it's not a priority to get a
Yeah.
tackle right now, because at the very least they're probably looking at McGlinchey and Bowles for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
not, even though they can get out of McGlinchey's contract after this year, it seems to be 2 years, and then we'll see.
I'm going to throw out just one thing because we're talking. Oh, sorry, let me grab this. We got Quentin Caldwell. I didn't see the super chat, so I do apologize. Quentin Caldwell coming in with a $2 super chat saying, "Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Quentin, and thank you for joining us. We definitely appreciate you for the support and for joining us on a wonderful Friday evening." I want to go back to tackle really fast because outside the box, Josh Simmons. Left tackle, true left tackle. Obviously, they just signed Garrett Bowles. And I know, Eric, you're shaking your head, but I'm going to bring the outside the box aspect to this guy. He's a tackle coming off of a torn patellar tendon. He's a quality left tackle, a starting left tackle. And you've got Garrett Bowles for the next 2 seasons. You got a guy that you can let him heal up, let him develop a little bit more, develop his game, develop some play strength that he has some issues with, especially as a run blocker. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility. I think that it's a non-0% chance, but it's a less than 1% chance. What do you think?
I mean, it's between 0 and 1%, and not
Mm-hmm.
just because of the position, but because of the player. Sean Payton has made it a mission to purge bad attitudes out of the locker room. And that
Mm-hmm.
is one of the big things, not the medical, it's the character stuff with Josh Simmons.
Ooh, I missed.
He's already running. They're expecting him back this season. He's already running. He did some workout stuff at the Ohio State Pro Day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the character. It's the attitude. Bob McGinn, he's talked about it. I want to say Dan Brugler's touched on it, but I might be mistaken on that one. I know Daniel Jeremiah has talked about it a little bit at during the combine was going on. So I just don't see that as a viable option for that reason.
I don't disagree with you. It's just outside the box. Why the hell not? Let's talk about somebody we haven't talked about before. Moving on here, we've got the wide receiver position. Everyone's talking about Luther Burden, Matthew Golden. You've got Emeka Egbuka, who I really like for the Broncos, but nobody's talking about Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. You're talking a big body, physical possession style receiver, very similar to Courtland Sutton, but not quite the same kind of guy. Bring a lot of the same skill sets. But if you want to get younger at the position, a guy that can go out there, does really well on slant and crossing routes, which is something that Sean Payton really likes out of his bigger body receivers. This makes a lot of sense for the Broncos. And Jaden Higgins, I believe, according to Trevor Sikkema, if you take away Travis Hunter, is wide receiver 3 on his board. And Trevor Sikkema is a widely respected analyst. Connor Rogers, I think, has him as number 5 as well. Those guys, they do a lot of great work on the NFL Stock Exchange. No free pub, but still. Jaden Higgins at 20 or trade down scenario, I can see it. I can see it happening for sure.
Yeah, he is my wide receiver too.
Look at that. Look at Erick Trickel being ahead of the race here. I love Jaden Higgins. I was watching the other day. There's some effort issues, I think, with him on the back end of plays, but he's a quality blocker on the front side. If the ball's not coming his way, that's the biggest issue I have with him. Big physical, good catch point player, great solid hands. He doesn't drop a lot of footballs. I like this guy. I like him a lot.
If they are not sold on extending Courtland Sutton, then Jaden Higgins makes a lot of sense.
I agree with you 100%.
Ideally, they'd be able to trade down, but who knows? Because, you have the Packers, you have the Texans, even the Steelers have been linked with the wide receiver in round 1, even after trading for DK Metcalf and having George Pickens. Matthew Golden has been the name thrown around with them. You also have the Bills who could be looking up for it, the Chiefs. So moving down makes it a little bit riskier with Jaden Higgins, but yeah, he's wide receiver too. He's got all the traits that you're looking for. And I think he just makes more sense of Denver's, even, to an extent, even if they are willing to extend Courtland Sutton, how long? He's, 29 years old, going to be 30, and 30 to 31 years old is typically when you see that drop off for receivers. So how long will they be willing to extend him? And Jaden Higgins could be that guy to kind of get in there and doing that. And Doug coming in and says, "Thanks for your hard work, blessings." Hey, I appreciate that a lot. I know Lance does as well. I don't want to put words in him. I'll let him get a chance to say here some here. But
No,
one thing
I
that I
hate it.
don't,
I hate all of the praise that you guys ever give me. Never praise me ever. I'm kidding. Thank you, Doug. We appreciate you.
but it's really appreciated, especially this time of year. I watched. There are 1,183 draft prospects this year that I have watched at least 3 games of. At least sometimes that's all I can get. I mean, when you're talking about Abilene Christian, that is about what you can get. There are about 565 players that are going to be play in total placed on my board. And it's been a lot of work of cutting down to figure out the grades and all that stuff. So I definitely appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. I've seen his board, and the way that he's doing it is like the work that he's putting in on this is insane. He allowed me to take a look at it a little bit earlier tonight. Hope I can't say the words that I want to say, but good lord, it's rather impressive the
And
amount of work that Eric puts in. So I appreciate him and allow him to just let me have the platform to talk with him because damn, this dude's freaking amazing.
and then Jason said, if they don't extend Sutton, I'll never believe a word Sean says ever again. It would be tough. And it's not just
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton, it's George Payton.
Mm-hmm.
George Payton's also been pretty adamant that they want to get a deal done. I think they will. I don't think they'll trade him. I don't think they'll not extend him. They'll get a deal done. I'm just saying, if they don't, then Jaden Higgins does make sense. And even if they do, Jaden Higgins can still make some sense. Now, the last player you have here, just to keep going and keep rolling, because we are running a little bit out of time, we are going to have to cut off Facebook here shortly, as we have an article getting ready to post on Facebook, so we can't be live and have that publish. But Donovan Izaraku, the edge out of Boston College,
Mm-hmm.
he is my number 2 edge rusher, I believe. He's number 2 or number 3. I can't remember exactly which one he falls or where he falls. And I want to be clear here, in my system, when that gets released, I'll put it on Twitter. I'm hoping for this Monday, but it might not be until next Wednesday. But Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart, they both have higher grades than him. I just don't have them as edge rushers. They are defensive ends for me. You know, these tweeners, these 4-eye to 7 technique guys. So they are in a different class for it. So that is Izaraku would be a good one. He could help with the run defense that the Broncos could use at the edge room.
Well, and I think the big thing here is what's the question going around with Nick Bonito? Do the Broncos actually want to extend Nick Bonito on a long-term basis and make him be the focal point of your edge rushing room? Yeah, he's had a handful of good breakout seasons, specifically this last year. But one of the biggest things is he doesn't win one-on-one very much. And when he does win one-on-one, it's in Eric, I know you're going to push back on this, garbage time. He led the NFL in garbage time sacks this last season, where the win percentage was less than 5% or greater than 95%. So he had a lot of those sacks that don't necessarily mean nothing, but they're not necessarily very valuable, if that makes sense. Donovan Izaraku is an elite edge rusher off the end. He has great first step bursts. They're very similar players. Do you want to extend Nick Bonito and make him a 16, 18, $20 million a year player? Or do you want to get younger and more valuable at the position with a player that's better against the run, in my opinion?
Yeah, what I'm pushing back on that is that you saying Bonito and Izaraku are similar players. They're not. Nick Bonito is very much more of that explosive guy. Izaraku is a technician who's going to break down tackles to beat them.
That's a fair point.
As well as being a better run defender. And Nick Bonito offers more in coverage. But no, I think the issue with Nick Bonito is how much is it going to take to get him? I think the Broncos have their mindset on a certain number, and I think it's going to be lower than what Nick Bonito is looking for. So the question then becomes, will they be willing to, place the franchise tag on him after this season and wait on a deal for even longer, or do they really prioritize getting a deal done this summer? And Jason kind of coming in here, Bonito's going to ask for a lot more than 16 million. Yes, I think he's going to be asking for a lot more than I think he's going to be asking for 22 to 26 million.
Yep.
And I think Denver's number is right about 20 million. So we'll see what happens of that.
Well, that's why I said 16, 18, 20, 22 million dollars. Like in that area, that's where I believe his value is. And we can go back and forth on Ezra versus Benito. That wasn't necessarily really my point. Similar players in terms of speed to power conversion. With Ezra is a question for sure. He's a better technician, better arsenal of pass rush moves, way better run defender. That's why I brought him into this conversation. Do you upgrade Nick Benito at 20 overall, or do you wait on edge in general? Like, what? That's the conversation worth having here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mike Kliss kind of had an article about it where he touched on edge early. I think it's definitely more likely than fans think it's happened. But I think it's one that they're going to be looking at for I talked about this with Nick the other day, a Savion Jones, a Landon Jackson, Shamar Stewart type, one of those guys who can be a stand-up 7
Right.
technique and drop their hand in the dirt and play a 4-eye,
Mm-hmm.
which Doug comes in and says, can you think of a player from West Virginia University going this draft? I can think of a few. There's Sean Martin, who kind of fits that mold. He's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit bigger. I think plays about 285 pounds, but he can definitely be that 4-eye technique. But he also showed some really good movement skills at the Shrine Bowl as a stand-up 7 technique and out of a 2-point stance. If you want to go offensive line, Nick Malone is an interior offensive lineman. Wyatt Milam, he played tackle for West Virginia, but he can drop inside. He's most likely going to be playing inside at guard this year, and he's one that Denver could look at.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more so Malone because he's projected to be an undrafted free agent. Milam is projected to go somewhere in the 3rd round, maybe the 4th, depending on how board falls, of course. And then there is another player here. I think it's a safety or a corner that is probably a 7th round pick to an undrafted free agent that really fits with what Vance Joseph likes to do. Name escapes me at the moment, and I can't remember for sure if it's a safety or a corner. Pretty sure it's a corner, but yeah. But there's a defensive back out of West Virginia as well.
All right, let's move to the second round here. We got to kind of hustle up a little bit. We're at
Well,
50
before
minutes
we
here.
get
Go ahead.
there,
Go ahead.
if you are on Facebook, go over to youtube.com/MileHuddle. We still got about 15 or so minutes left of this conversation to go. And here in about 5 minutes, we're going to have to cut out the Facebook feeds. So go jump over to YouTube and you can join us there for that.
Yeah, we can extend a little bit longer, but unfortunately, with the article going up on Facebook, we have to cut it short there. Again, join us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or excuse me, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch are the 3 you can still join us on. So please move on over to those websites and you can continue on with the conversation. Second round players here. Obviously, defensive lineman is something we've talked about a handful of different times, whether it's Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, Tyleik Williams, Kenneth Grant, a guy as a interior defensive lineman, 0-1 to more 3 technique. I think his better fit as a 2-eye 3 technique is TJ Sanders from South Carolina. Trevor Sikkema from the NFL Stock Exchange podcast calls him Bull Rush McIntyre. This dude is explosive and he is incredibly powerful, and he doesn't get nearly enough love from Broncos country as he should deserve at 51 overall.
Yeah, I actually did one of my Monday mock drafts that I do every Monday, and I had Denver, I think, moving down like 2 spots in the 2nd round and getting TJ Sanders. He is very much a 4-eye technique who can drop and play 3 technique. He's not a 0-1. In fact, if you turn on his tape and you see him at all try to handle a double team, you're going to see him end up on the ground. But Bull Rush McIntyre, that is a very fitting name. He will drive through you. Won't really go around tackles. But there is a fun interview that I think that includes Greg Corsell and a bunch of other guys that they talk about it. And they're talking about how offensive linemen absolutely hate guys who know how to bull rush, because it doesn't matter how explosive you are or anything like that. At some point, you're going to have to go through an offensive lineman. You might get 1 or 2 wins, Nick Benito in this case, working around the tackle, but you're not going to be consistent if you can't get a bull rush going. And TJ Sanders, he's the opposite. The bull rush is there, but he can't work around him. In the 2nd round, if Denver still has a defensive tackle and they're specifically looking for a 4-eye technique to improve over Jordan Jackson as that 3rd man of that rotation, again, DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach, they're that 0-1-2 techniques. They're not part of that 3-4-eye 5 technique with John Franklin-Myers and Zach Allen. TJ Sanders would be a really good pick for them.
Well, and I think that the length and speed to power conversion with him, again, that bull rush, like I'm going to run through a mother effer's face. Like, quite honestly, that's his mentality coming off the defensive line. Let's go to the 2nd level of the defense here. Obviously, linebacker has been a problem for the Broncos. They obviously signed Dre Greenlaw in free agency. Alex Singleton coming back off of a torn ACL from this last season. So there's some questions there. Obviously, depth concerns for sure. Justin Strnad played admirably for sure as a depth piece, stepping in for Alex Singleton. But you've got some versatile players here. Carson Swessinger, we've talked about before. I want to talk about Demetrius Knight. At 51 overall, to me, it's a little bit rich. I think he's more of a third-round player, but he's a downhill physical runner. He's got some coverage versatility. There's some IQ questions that I have with him in terms of seeing what's going on in front of him. He's much more of a see ball, chase ball, click and close player than a true technician taking on blockers and allowing himself to be free. But Demetrius Knight at 51, I don't hate it for Denver.
Yeah, before I get into that, I want to grab this question from John Martin. He asking, what about Simeon Barrow out of Miami for nose tackle? I like Simeon Barrow. Again, he's one of those 4-eye techniques. John Frankenmeyer, Zach Allen, more of that mold than a true inside guy. Tested out phenomenally well at the Miami Pro Day. And he's a guy that projections for him are a little bit all over the place, from a 6th round to a undrafted free agent. Now, if you are on Facebook, this is your last chance before we got cut out of it. Go jump over to youtube.com/milehighhuddle to keep joining part of the conversation there, because unfortunately it is time that I do have to remove the Facebook groups. Otherwise I would get yelled at by boss man Chad. So we appreciate you guys joining in and all that, but we have to click over to just YouTube now. Now going back to your question about Demetrius Knight, he's kind of another one that's all over the place. There are some who believe he can crack the 1st round. I am not one of them. There are some who think he can be there in the 3rd round. I am not one of them. I think he is a 2nd round player, somewhere between 45 and 60. That is the range I go. He is so good working downhill. He is a very stereotypical stack backer. Take on blocks, shed them, make a play. Working between the tackles, some good sideline to sideline. Decent enough in coverage. Hey, he's Alex Singleton. If Denver's looking at a guy to replace Alex Singleton either this year or next year, Demetrius Knight. He doesn't have the football IQ that Alex Singleton does. He does have a little bit more, or I should say, a lot more athleticism to work with than Alex Singleton does.
Yep.
And athleticism can help cover up some issues with the football IQ. But if Denver's looking for a stack backer, someone to replace Alex Singleton this year or next year, he's on this final year of his deal. He's on the wrong side of 30. Who knows what he's going to be like coming off the injury? Demetrius Knight makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I agree too. And there's some coverage versatility with him too. He'll get lost in some space, but if you can really narrow down and get him in the classroom, I think he's a smart kid. I think he's just so young and unrefined in his technique that's the biggest problem with him. He'll run into blockers rather than try to avoid them, and he gets lost in space and zone coverage specifically. But if you put him man-on-man against a tight end or even wide receiver, he has enough athleticism to hang in man-on-man coverage. And with what Vance Joseph likes to do with his linebackers at the 2nd level, it makes a lot of sense, dude.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things. It makes it. And I saw Todd mentioned in the thing about Jihad Campbell. Jihad Campbell's kind of the same thing. He is a much better athlete, doesn't quite have the football IQ questions that these other guys do. But in the 1st round at pick 20, Jihad Campbell as a replacement for Alex Singleton, Jihad Campbell makes sense.
Yep.
William comes in and says, we love Lott, Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. And I can't remember exactly who it is, but he is either the nephew of Vance Joseph or Jamar Cain. I can't remember. I can never remember who it is specifically.
I think it's Jamar Cain.
But he's one of their nephews.
I can Google that.
Which Jamar Cain, if you don't know, he is the Broncos defensive line coach.
Yes.
Jason Bonney coming in saying Nazir Stackhouse will be a good pickup later at nose tackle if they haven't addressed it early. It would be if he was actually decent at handling double teams.
Omar Norman Lott is the nephew of Jamar Cain, which that ties into a lot of the connections there with the Broncos. Let's go to the secondary here, because I brought up Trey Amos. There's a player here that I keep hearing, whether it's Trevor Sikkema, Dane Brugler as well, Nate Tice, a bunch of different NFL draft analysts, like highly respected guys, talking about Savone Ravello, the cornerback out of ECU, being a 1st round talent. And this is there's a lot of questions here. First things first, big 6'2", 215 pounds, or 205 pounds, I think, 33-inch arms. He's got the size, the length, the physicality, everything you want from a press man coverage cornerback, and his tape is insane. It's crazy to watch. But you're talking about a player that played at a lower level in college, and he also tore his ACL in September. So you didn't get to see him play this season, and you didn't get to see him play at the Senior Bowl where he was invited to go to do some medical rechecks. Unlike Quinion Mitchell, who went and solidified himself as the best cornerback in the NFL draft last season, Savon Ravel, dude, I like him for Denver. Again, that adding more depth to this cornerback room, you take a risk on the injury concern for sure, but he makes a lot of sense to add to this cornerback room for me.
Yeah, I think it was Wednesday morning. Nick brought up Siobhan Ravel and kind of was talking about him being a fan for him. He's the guy that I could see crack that back into the first round. It's like the same conversation we were having with Trey Amos,
Mm-hmm.
right? Corner is a weird class. The class overall is a weird one with a few, genuine first round grades. That corner might be one that's reached on, I should say. And Ravel is one. After we got done talking on, I think, pretty sure it was Wednesday morning about it, I click over to Twitter and there is a thing about, hey, everything's all good medically. He should be good to go. He's getting ready to start running. He should be able to start working out here after the draft at rookie minicamps on a more limited basis, but you can start working him back into the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of his. I have been for a while. My issue is just not being able to see him against some tougher competition really
Mm-hmm.
hurts with smaller school guys. But he did the first part of it. He dominated his level of competition. The
Yep.
second part of that is seeing him go up and Senior Bowl. How does he handle the tougher guys from the bigger schools? That's what was missed out on. So if he falls a little bit, if he's there at 51, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I'm right there with you. And a big thing with him is the ball skills. He had a couple of interceptions in the 3 games that he played this season, the first 3 games of the season in September. He had 2 interceptions. One, I believe he actually returned for a touchdown on a crossing route, which the way that he played that was so insanely incredible. I mean, trail technique, got in front of the wide receiver a little bit, had to slow down, jump in front of the ball, and then take it back to the house. Insane rep. But he's also physical. He brings a physical presence as a tackler that I really like. And Eric, I know we talked about it last week off the show, but you really like players at the cornerback position that bring that physicality as a run defender, and he does. He's a good blitzer too. Like this kid's really, really fun to watch. We're going to go flip to the offensive side of the football here as we're kind of going rapid fire. I want to get through. I got 5 more players I want to talk about. This is our last pick in the second round here that I want to get to. Obviously, we talked about Jaden Higgins at number 20 overall. Another guy, bigger body, really works well on slants, crossing routes, run after the catch ability. If you watch the game from Stanford against Colorado this last season, Erick Iomaner, a lot of long catch and run plays that he had. I think he had
2023, not
yards.
2024.
Was that 20? Oh, it was 20. Excuse me. So I apologize for that. Anyways, it was like 225 yards on 12 catches for 2 touchdowns, and both of those touchdowns were long catch and run situations. This dude makes a ton of sense for what the Broncos have in their wide receiver room.
The issue with him is drops.
Yeah,
that's one of the big knocks from him. More limited route tree, but it is a route tree that works with the Broncos can use with what Sean Payton likes to run. So that's not a big ding for him when it comes to the Broncos. He has a 3rd round grade for me, but remember, my grading isn't specific for the Broncos. It is overall. For the Broncos, I would probably put him a little bit higher because of the route tree. What hurts him overall? Broncos, it doesn't. Again, specified route tree for the Broncos, it fits. Blocker, absolutely love it. I love physical blockers at the receiver position. Absolutely, it's one of the musts for me.
Yep.
And then the hands. That's one of my bigger issues with him is the hands overall. A lot of drops on it, but it kind of gets balances out a little bit. He's probably the only receiver to consistently get the best of Travis Hunter. And that 2023 Colorado game that you mentioned, he is absolutely eating up Travis Hunter for the most of the game. I think all but like 2 of his catches came against Travis Hunter. I can't remember exactly. Absolutely ate up that defense. Huge game for him. And it's one that's always going to be come back to when you talk about his draft stock as, hey, look what he did against one of the top 2 players in this NFL draft.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love Erick Iomaner. I want to go back, just a quick comparison between the two. You remember how much I was in love with Denzel Mims in the 2021 NFL draft class? Erick Iomaner and Denzel Mims are actually very similar, at least in my opinion. Same body type, same build, same kind of quick slant, catch radius, drop issues, dominating blockers at the point of attack. Like there's some similarities there, no?
No, I think there's some. It's not a one for one comparison.
No,
There's
no,
none
no,
are.
no.
Because I mean, hey, comparisons. That just means you compared him to a bus. That means he's going to bust, right?
Right.
Um, that was a joke, by the way.
I know.
It was more so for those listening in after the fact. But yeah, I mean, there's some similarities there to it.
Yeah.
Aomanor, he's one that's kind of hard to make a like clean comparison to
Mm-hmm.
because there's not one guy that is so similar with that it makes it such a clean comparison.
No, I agree with you. I was just like thinking, you were talking about him and the dominant blocker that he is, some drop issues, but works better on slants and crossing routes more than go routes. Like it makes a lot of sense there. Let's get to the third round here. I'm gonna rapid fire off four guys so we can get out of here quickly. Interior defensive line, we talked about a couple of players. We talked about Tyleik Williams. We talked about TJ Sanders. JJ Pegues, the other Ole Miss interior defensive lineman, who I think is more of a nose tackle. I think he's a 0-1, 2-eye technique kind of a guy, corkscrew anchor type in the middle of your defense, really good run defender, some upside as a pass rusher, although I don't necessarily see it. I heard upside as a pass rusher. I didn't like it. Darian Porter, cornerback out of Iowa State, very long, very physical, very fluid, a freak of an athlete, better in zone coverage than man, but I think he has the tools to work there. Then you got Josiah Stewart, the edge defender out of Michigan, who is one of the most elite pass rushers in college football all of this last season. I believe he had a pass rush win rate in one-on-one situations in the 40s. Like, this dude is insanely gifted as a pass rusher. Run defense, size concerns, definitely there. And then the last guy, another wide receiver here out of Utah State, Jalen Royals, Z receiver, in my opinion, a guy that can work vertically, though it's not necessarily his best skill set. Just a trustworthy, reliable guy. You can work over the middle of the field, has some deep versatility to him. Out of those guys, man, a lot of fun to talk through here.
Yeah. So going through that real quick, JJ Pegues,
Is it Pegues or
definitely
Pegues?
Pegues, I
Sorry.
believe, if I remember the Ole Miss pronunciation guide correctly. Um, but he's what makes him so interesting isn't just his play as a nose tackle. It's kind of become a gag with me a little bit talking about what
Mm-hmm.
he's done on offense. But he's been a Wildcat quarterback, 21 rushes last year, 7 touchdowns, was a former tight end, initially committed to Auburn as a tight end, caught 7 passes from Bo Nix. So you can kind of use them in different ways, and finding that the versatility of ways to use him for Sean Payton, I think could be a lot of fun for him. Then you have Darian Porter, former wide receiver, still learning how to play cornerback. Definitely going to take some time. And the Broncos, the way that their cornerback room is set up, with the contracts of Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan, they can definitely afford that time for Darian Porter. Josiah Stewart, he is much of the same of what they already have. I think there are other edges that will be available at that point that fit a little bit better with what the Broncos and isn't super redundant. But if it is a situation where Nick Benito, they're kind of hesitant on extending him or keeping him around long term, then Josiah Stewart does make sense in that aspect. But I believe that they'll extend Nick Benito either this offseason or wait, franchise tag him, and then extend him next offseason. Jalen Royals, definitely a slot receiver, really good route runner, solid blocker, solid route tree, just a very capable player. I question how much upside there is, how much of an long-term impact he can make at a high level,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely for a more immediate impact. And by immediate, I'm not saying it's like 2-3 years. He can probably give you like 5, 6, maybe 7 years of high level impact out of the slot.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on Jalen Royals. I think there's a little bit more versatility. He can work down the field a little bit more, but an exquisite route runner. This dude just knows how to create separation. He's constantly wide open over the middle of the field. I love watching his tape. I believe as Connor Rogers said that he is the most underrated wide receiver prospect in this draft class. People are not talking nearly enough about him. And as a third round pick, if you can add that to your wide receiver room, and again, upgrade over the slot. You don't know exactly what Marvin Mims is. We still have no clue exactly what Troy Franklin is. And yeah, he's a deep down the field kind of a threat. That's kind of what his game is, or at least what the Broncos use him as. You need a guy that can work over the middle of the field and be a reliable option. And I think Jalen Royals really accentuates that. That was pretty
And
much all I had. Go ahead, Eric. I was going to say we need to probably get this
I'm going to
show closed out here in
clarify.
a second.
I want to clarify a comment here. So Jason Bonnie, it is Todd, because Todd made a comment about this is supposed to be a good draft for defensive tackle. That's why I was confused when they said it drives up after the third round. Jordan Phillips, Jamari Caldwell, Riley Mills, etc., will all most likely go after the third round. Two things here. One, when you talk about a strong draft, there is always a point where that fall off happens.
Yep.
Defensive tackle, it's a strong class because there's a lot of guys that are going to go in the top 100. And after that, dries up. That wasn't the right wording by me, but it definitely gets a little bit more pick and choose. There are still guys after that. There are always guys after that. A couple of years ago, we were talking about wide receiver being one of those positions that kind of dries up after the top 125. There are still guys that can be found after that, but it's a little bit more limited, a little bit harder. That's the case with defensive tackle this year. Yes, you have these guys, but they are viewed in that way for a range. Jordan Phillips, he's a guy that could very well crack the top 100, probably a top 122 pick. Jamari Caldwell's in the same thing with that. Riley Mills. Only reason why Riley Mills isn't higher is because of some medical issues. That's one reason why he's down the board. That's one of those things of like talent dries up a little bit. Well, there's a guy due to medicals that's falling. That's kind of like a little bit of an exception there. And there's a few other guys, but it also depends on what you're looking for. After that third round, after the top 100, you find a lot more nose tackles. YA Black, that's the range he's supposed to go. Elijah Simmons out of Tennessee.
Zeke Biggers.
Deion Walker's is a lot of people are saying that he's going to fall out of the third round because of a lot of issues with his weight. But he's, I'd put him in that same category as Phillips. CJ West doesn't have the ideal size. So it's one of those things of like, the talent, it can be a strong class, but there is a point where the talent starts to fall off a little bit.
Yep.
That is what I was getting at with the defensive line.
Well, and unlike the running back class, I mean, you get through the top 100 picks. I mean, there's still a handful of guys. Quentin Jackson out of Arkansas, I like a lot. You got Phil Moffer from Clemson, Marcus Yarns. There's a handful of guys. Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings. Those are quality players. Like it's a quality class, but there is that significant drop off at that running back class around somewhere 150 or so. There really is a drop off. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of pick and choose what flavor you want, but it's not the same as the top 75 where you've got 16, 18 guys, according to Todd McShay. Like that. Right. There's that drop off. Eventually, you're going to hit that. Anyways, I think we need to close. Eric, if you got another couple comments, we need to probably close.
I was just going to say, hope you enjoyed the basketball game. Thank you for joining us, Jason. Even though a lot of pushback there, no hard feelings.
No, absolutely.
I just want to make that clear. It's like, even though I may have come off a little bit heated, no hard feelings there. Just wanted to address that because I saw you make a comment about that earlier, and I did want to clear up my statement just to make it a little bit clear. But we do got to get out of here. As you guys can see, scrolling on the bottom of the screen, super chats on YouTube and stars on Facebook support the channel and your dedicated podcast hosts, and those are very much appreciated. But if you are unable to do so financially, there are other ways that you can help us. You can help us by subscribing, liking, and share. Those are good ways on whatever platform you are watching to help us with the algorithms that are ever changing and always giving us headaches. You can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you watch the podcast and leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some gear, not swag. I hate saying swag every single month. You can follow us on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with an underscore between mile and high and huddle. You can go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, Mile High Huddle Pod, or there's another one too that's name escapes me at the moment, and follow us on there. You can also follow on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, at MHH Pod, at DVDD_pod. And if you are able to do so financially, you can go check out mhhmerch.com to get your gear on, not swag. Again, I hate saying swag, but you can get some cool hats like the one that I have on or the one that Lance has on. They're the same. Or some shirts, some coffee mugs, some hats or shirts for other different sites as well. And we appreciate all of your guys' support, whether it's financial, whether it's being part of the chat, whether it's liking, subscribing, sharing, whatever it may be. Word of mouth, that is another way to help. We appreciate y'all. You guys help us do this full time, or help me do this full time, and help us do this every Friday night. And I cannot tell you how much we appreciate you guys just for joining in every single Friday night, and with me on Monday and Wednesday mornings with Nick as well. But we appreciate you guys. But before we get out of here, Lance, any final words?
No, man, it's just it's always fun to talk the NFL draft with you. It was a great show, a lot of good commentary back and forth, talking about a lot of players that don't typically get talked about for the Denver Broncos at their top three NFL draft picks this season. So to me, it's always great to get the depth of knowledge, allow me to talk about the draft as well, but to open up the conversation and to have some fun, get away from real life. It's always what we do here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. And without you guys' support, we can do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. So with that, I'll just say thank you all for your support. We love you, appreciate you guys. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining in again. Quentin Caldwell with one last comment. That might explain why we need one of the top defensive line players, especially if we are not signing both John fucking Myers and Zach Allen. The way Zach Allen's contract is, a deal has to get done with him. That's basically a given, just because of the void years in it. A lot of money becomes dead if he's not signed to a deal. So it kind of forces a situation there. But yeah, that's what I was getting at, is with the talent drying up, that's why it's kind of important for the Broncos to get a defensive lineman early. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Hope you guys stay safe. Don't drink and drive. And as I continue to steal this from Nick, make sure you guys choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos. And go Avalanche too. I guess the playoffs are coming up soon.